Kia ora koutou, welcome to Whiteboard Friday. Now this is a pretty mammoth topic, but I'm going to try and condense it down into one Whiteboard Friday session on the National Policy Statement that the government released yesterday. Very complex topic, but let's have a go. In essence, what the government is really saying to us is that they want most cities, but in particular Auckland, they want Auckland to spread out and not go up. There's been a lot of talk about whether we want Auckland to go out or up. I think most people agree that it needs to do both, but all of the incentives really are for Auckland to spread, to sprawl across the countryside and not build up in the centre of town. And we've seen that again in the National Policy Statement. Now I want to explain to you why that is a bad idea. And here we have my very detailed drawing of Auckland. This is a model, if you like, a representation of Auckland. Lots of little bungalows on their own sections. We're generally not building up. So if we were to build up, of course, we would build 2 or 3 story medium density housing in the centre of town. That's building up. And building out means continuing to build more of these little bungalows on these little sections all the way out across the Bombay Hills. And there's a number of reasons why that is a bad idea. Firstly, I mentioned the Bombay Hills. We've actually in the last decade lost 1/6 of our most arable land. Now you are wondering why veggie prices have been going up more than our incomes since 2006. Here's your reason. Some of the best land is in the Bombay Hills, volcanic soils. It's not as vulnerable to disease as the land north. It's not as vulnerable to frost as the land south. So it's pretty unique in New Zealand's veggie growing ecosystem, if you like. And actually, it's the only place in New Zealand that can grow leafy greens and carrots from October to December. So if we concrete over the Bombay Hills, then we are going to be importing that stuff and you'll really feel it in your vegetable prices then. So that's one reason why sprawl is not a great idea. But the other reasons are much more financial. And this is why there's such a big fight over who's going to pay for Auckland infrastructure. Because if you sprawl out, of course you need more infrastructure, you need more water systems, you need more sewage systems, you need more roads. All this stuff has to be built all the way out to the new areas that you are building in. And some people suggest that the bill for that, all of this sprawl that needs to happen to accommodate demand in Auckland will cost around about $17 billion. Now the question is who should pay for that? National, of course, are saying that the council should pay for it, but the council has very strict limitations on how much it can borrow, all those sorts of things. So ultimately, the only way they can pay for that is by selling assets. Labour is saying that they would allow the councils to take on extra debt to pay for that infrastructure, and then the people that built in these areas would have slightly higher rates to pay that debt back. It's a targeted rate. So effectively Labour's trying to say that the people building the sprawl will pay for it, whereas National wants all ratepayers in Auckland to pay for it. But even under Labour's plan, they're not going to get the full costs of sprawl, because these guys living way out here at the end of the day still need to come into the centre of town to work. A lot of them will need to do anyway. And that really increases the congestion that we have going on in the centre of Auckland. This is another massive, massive cost that is not being taken into account in current considerations. Now, when you look at ways of dealing with this congestion, the answer is obvious. It's public transport. We know that a bus can take as many as 5 times the amount of people in passenger cars in the same space. So passenger cars take up a much larger space to carry the same number of people as a bus does. For rail, that's actually 20 times. So in the same space that's taken up by the transport, you can transport 20 times as many people on rail and 5 times as you can in bus. So it's a hell of a lot more cost effective in terms of reducing congestion to use public transport. But again, who is going to pay for this? The ideal answer is to have congestion charging. That means that people who still want to use their cars to get into the centre of town would pay a charge to do so. This happens in many places in the world, including London. And the idea of that is that it discourages people to use their cars, and that money can then be used to pay for the public transport infrastructure that is needed. Unfortunately, none of the major parties are really talking about congestion charging. So there is no real way to take into account the full extra costs of sprawl. And that is why we need to see the national policy statement and all these other policies that government and opposition are working on, giving the council the powers to build up as well as out, because in the long run it will be cheaper for all of us.